Welcome to the Ben Wood Johnson podcast. You can visit Dr. Johnson's blog at benwoodpost.com. Dr. Johnson's works can be found at drbenwoodjohnson.com. You can also support Dr. Johnson on Patreon, the link to which is in the description. Welcome back to the Ben Wood Johnson podcast. Today is July 16, 2018. This is podcast number 9. I am delighted to have you back here. This is the second installment on our series about emotionality versus rationality. The reason it is important, it is because at the end of the day, we have to understand who we are, how we react to the natural environment, and how that reaction sometimes could lead to the way we understand ourselves within the environment. There is this understanding that people or human beings are rational beings, and whatever we do, we sort of rationalize it. Thereby, we are responsible for what we do or what we don't do. And I beg to differ on that, because I happen to believe that there are certain things in nature or within the natural environment that require a certain reaction, that require a certain way of being, which the individual on the outset has absolutely no say other than his nature kicks in the moment, right? So at that particular moment, the individual is sort of the captive of his nature. So he cannot not react to his nature, and his nature sometimes dictates how he reacts, when he reacts, and within which context he reacts a certain way. Like I have said in the beginning of this series, human beings are not rational beings, rather we are emotional beings. We are tied with nature. We respond to nature in terms of the cues and the stimuli of the natural milieu where we evolve. And this is true even though we live in a social environment. We tend to react to that environment according to the way we perceive that environment. And I think it is important, and I think this is the key element when we're trying to decipher the context of rationality versus emotionality. So without further ado, let us get to it. React with emotions. Everything a person does is based on emotions, okay? Man is an emotional beast. Everything men do, it is based on emotions, okay? Now, of course, when 2, 3, 4, 5 men see the world a certain way, then it becomes a norm, right? That does not necessarily turn that norm, which is emotional at its core, logical or rational to some extent. So we have to take that into account as well. Is that what we do because we do it doesn't mean we are supposed to do it. I mean, if we're looking at the emotional aspect of what we do, we're going to realize that most of what we do is emotions, is a feeling, is a reaction to a sensory reality. I remember reading a story about a hunter. He was having some problems with the local government because the local government would not allow his child to go hunting with him. The hunter was saying he is disappointed. He is distraught. That's the worst thing that ever happened to him, because he's not able to share a moment with his child when he kills a deer. Now, this is a display of irrationality. This is a completely irrational way of looking at the world. The person believes and genuinely believes that being able to kill a deer and to enjoy that moment with his skin, it's a good thing. It's a sense of connection with another human being. That's irrationality at its core. Now, he has a right to feel this way, but this is emotion, to say the least. This is not rationality. Now we have to understand that emotionality is everything that ought to be, and the being understands the need of these things to be. Okay? This is different from rationality. Rationality is what one wants to be, and one creates the environment, one creates the conditions, one creates the atmosphere to accomplish that. So being rational is a choice. It is a decision one makes to a reality one faces. Emotions or emotionality, on the other hand, it's a reaction. It is a decision one makes based on a reality one faces, right? If one faces a lion, one could either rationalize the reality of being in front of a lion, one could rationalize the possibility of imminent death, or one could emotionalize that imminent death. One could emotionalize that reality by saying, I am about to die. Let me get the hell out of here. The rational thinking process in this instance would allow the being to develop ways to get out of the danger zone, right? Emotionality, on the other hand, would be different because the being would not think about the possibilities. Generally, when we're talking about emotions, the being is going to react when it's gut instinct, right? So in this case, the being would not be wondering why the lion is trying to eat me. The being would say, get the hell out of here. And he would do that by any means. Sometimes he could even run towards the lion, right? So we have to understand the goal in being emotional is to survive, is to protect oneself within the environment. So men are inherently emotional beasts. Men are emotional animals as opposed to rational. So the understanding that men are rational beings is completely erroneous. I would argue that men are not rational. Rather, men are emotional and will always be. And I think we have to take that into account in terms of what we do, what we don't do, how we do, and how we don't do. Because at the end of the day, if we don't know or understand the difference between who we are and who we want to be, and that could ultimately lead to our demise. So we have to realize when our emotions are kicking in, when we'll rationalize a reality which requires rationality rather than emotionality. This is important in terms of what we do, how we do, why we do, and when we do. Okay? Now, that does not mean that men could not be rational. I'm not suggesting that men are not rational, but men are always emotional. Emotions are at the core of every human being. Emotions is a natural state of being. Men are always emotional. Rationality is a state men have to achieve. It's a state of being a person has to achieve at a particular time. So it is always a struggle to be rational instead of being emotional. Emotionality is a lingering state, what I'm trying to say here. So men are always emotional. Men always react with emotion in any given time, in any moment. While in the moment, man could find a way to rationalize his reality. He could rationalize that situation, but instinctively, emotions always kick in.